Hi, Heather. I'm Julie, and it's so great to meet you. Thanks for taking the time to get together and chat about your work and what you do and the impact that you've made in the world. So tell me about your nonprofit. Tell me about what you do and your role there.
Thanks for having me. Looking
Yeah.
forward to this conversation. Yeah, so my name is Heather Beem. I started a nonprofit in Ghana. It's called PEN, Practical Education Network, and we're into STEM education and teacher training. And it really was birthed out of my own experience in school. Um, I studied mechanical engineering. I know I'm a nerd, like the technology and stuff. But I got to experience both like very theoretical classes and then very hands-on project-based classes. And I realized that when I was in those settings where it was very hands-on, it was a whole new world for me and my peers as well. And it was not only helpful for learning better, but it sort of gave us this confidence that we can go out in the world and solve problems because now we have like a toolkit. We know how to break things down. We know how to design and bring ideas into the world. And so I started to become curious about what it would take to help students in other parts of the world get to access that in their education. Like, why not, when every kid is going to school, why not have that be an outcome that when they leave school, they're ready to go out into the world and solve problems? That should be what we're aiming for, I would think. And so I wanted to see how we could make that the reality, especially in places where it seems particularly challenging in terms of material resources. So that these sets of ideas and questions and conversations led me to a school in Ghana a number of years ago. I found myself in this school where I was with a few high school students, and we managed to build a wind turbine in just a few days using a plastic bucket, wires and magnets that we got from old computers. So it just showed what was possible using simple everyday materials. These students were able to make something that was super useful for them because while we were at the school, the electricity was hardly working. So to be able to generate electricity was really powerful. And so ever since that moment in that classroom, I've been kind of laser focused, I guess I would say, in pursuit of this mission of seeing how best we can enable students across Ghana, across Africa, to get to experience a very hands-on education when they go to school.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Solving problems that you're entering the world and leaving school ready to solve problems. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
That's what business is. That's what nonprofits are, right? Solving problems for people.
that's true.
Okay, so I love that origin story. PEN, Practical Education Network. So, what's your big vision for impact? What do you hope to accomplish in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? What does that look like for PEN?
Our vision is Africa wide. So we're looking to see that the new normal in science and math classrooms across the continent is one in which students are doing projects, they're doing activities. That is the status quo, you know. There's no longer people saying that, oh, we can't do that because we don't have a lab in our school, which is what currently happens. And people will say, like in Ghana, there's a phrase they say, chew and pour, which is like you just memorize information, you're chewing it, and then you pour it out for the exam. That's the status quo currently, is students are spending years of their lives just memorizing things. And so our vision is that across the continent, the new normal is that students are doing projects or doing activities when they go to school, and when they're coming out, they're equipped with those problem solving and critical thinking skills.
So, you say Africa wide. What does that mean?
Every school, every student on the African continent should have the opportunity to access hands-on learning.
So, how many people is that? Because the young people in Africa, don't they have like the most young people? Aren't all the world's young people in Africa?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
the
know a
statistics
lot, but I
are
know that. I'm like, there's so many young people.
that's true. And I don't have that figure off head. I should look that up. Um, but yeah, I think in a lot of the African, at least sub-Saharan African countries, it's like 60 or 70% of the population is youth. Yeah. So
Right.
it's a lot of people.
So, I mean, tens of millions,
Yes.
more than that.
At least, yeah.
And that's what you want, either your nonprofit, Practical Education Network, you want to spearhead that and partner with other people, or you want to do that.
Definitely it can be through partnerships. Yeah. I think based on what we've already seen in Ghana, there's a lot of power in, you know, people coming together from different angles to make STEM more in the forefront. So yeah, definitely it can be in partnership with others.
Yeah. So tell me about what Practical Education Network looks like right now. So, because that's a massive vision, and I applaud you. I think that's beautiful. What does it look like right now? You're primarily in Ghana, is that correct?
Hmm.
Okay. And
Yes.
how many schools, how many students are you reaching? How many teachers are you training? Can you quantify what your current impact looks like for me?
In total, we've reached over 9,000 teachers since we started in 2016. And those are largely coming from different schools. So roughly that same number of schools in total.
Okay.
Mostly in
And
Ghana, but we have piloted in Rwanda and Liberia as well.
uh-huh.
But
All right.
for now, the staff is in Ghana.
Gotcha. And so let's talk about fundraising. So you have impacted, you've trained 9,000 teachers over 9 years.
Hmm.
I'm sure that that hasn't been totally linear. I'm sure that you maybe started out with, 50 and then got to 200 a year, or, now you've doubled, tripled your impact.
Right.
How do you fundraise? What does your fundraising model look like right now?
We get funding from a variety of sources. We get funding from individuals, family foundations, corporates with their social responsibility, and we've gotten funding from other NGOs locally in Ghana, and then one of the UN agencies. So it's been quite a mix of sources.
Right. Do you do the grant writing yourself?
I have a couple colleagues that help with the proposal writing.
Okay. Okay. And so let's talk about individual giving. So what does your individual giving revenue look like, and how much from roughly how many donors, and what do you want it to be?
Hmm. I think the last few years, individual donations have been around 70,000 or maybe up to about 100,000 per year,
Okay.
which is yeah, a little less than half of our total revenue. Um, yes, and that's coming from maybe about 60 people, 60, 70 people per year,
Mm-hmm.
roughly. So yeah, that's where we're at, and it's been pretty constant the last few years. I think I kind of started the fundraising from individuals in earnest probably around 2020, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
There was a little ramp up in those first couple of years, and then the last few years it's been pretty constant, which I think is good in the sense that people are showing loyalty, they're
Mm.
ready to keep giving year on year when I reach out. But I would love to see that increase. I'd love for us to get to a point where even individual giving is at least covering our ongoing sort of day-to-day operational needs. That would be huge for us if we got
And
there.
what would that amount be?
Um, Maybe about double, like maybe
Okay.
almost double of what it currently is. Yeah.
Yeah. So 100 to 200.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So Heather, are you familiar with the 80/20 principle?
Yes, I have heard of that.
Okay. So this is true. It's a reality across the universe. I know that sounds very dramatic, but it's not necessarily something to try to fix or solve for. It's something to leverage in our favor, and it allows us to work smarter, not harder. So fundraising is already hard work, right? It's like if we can find ways to create leverage, let's do it. And I imagine from about your 100K individual giving revenue, of your 60, there's likely a couple handfuls of donors who give the majority of that 100K, right? 20% of donors give 80% of the revenue. It's like when you have a team, any team, 20% of the people on the team do 80% of the work, right? There's just some people, they're all stars. They just
Mhm.
carry a heavier load. They're more talented, they're more intelligent, they're harder working, they're more resilient. They just can take on more, and it's not fair, and that's the way life is. You didn't know this would be therapy, Heather. And so we're like, sometimes I think the temptation is like, oh, we need to get everybody to be giving more. But some people,
Mm,
they're just going to give what they can give. And it may not be their best, or it could be. We might perceive that they
sure.
have more to give, right? And they don't.
Hmm.
And so I think what's really powerful that you've shared is your retention seems, like you said, we have people who are loyal, who stick with us. But there's likely, let's say a dozen or so donors who are going to give 80% of the revenue. And it's important for those people to be giving their best gifts.
Okay.
And at the stage of growth that you're in, I imagine that to get from 100 to 200, it's going to come from those 12 people,
Mm,
most likely.
okay.
um, let's say 80% of it will, right? So when you think about that, think about, and you don't have to say specific names, you can use alias if you like. Think about your top most loyal donors. Why do they give? Like the folks who you would say they're in your corner, they're a fan of Heather. They want you to win. They believe in what you're doing in your organization, Practical Education Network. They're like, yeah, this mission, we're about this. And they've been giving, loyally, like you described. Those top people who are individuals, or it could be a family foundation, or it could be it's a human ultimately, right? It's a person.
Yeah.
What are their reasons for giving? Like what there might be a few, but from what you know, why do they donate to Penn?
Hmm. Yeah, I guess the answers might be a little different for the people I'm thinking of. I think for the family foundation that supported us for a few years, they like the cost um, to impact ratio, if you can put it that way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like more bang for their buck kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Um, and then another person that I'm thinking of, I think we're connected in terms of faith, and so they feel like um, a lot of resonance with my motivation for doing what I'm doing, and they feel like they want to support that. And then
Mm.
a couple others, I think, like they really care a lot about education. Maybe they were teachers or they just, experience the power of education in their own life. And so they're like, wow, this is a really awesome example of education being done well. So I guess a few different reasons.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Um, the reason I ask is when I'm making an ask, I remind them of their reasons why
Okay.
when I do it.
Okay.
So if you're wondering how to get your top donors to give their best gifts, then as you're inviting them to give more, one of the things I see that is a big mistake people make, and they don't know because nobody really teaches this, that has helped me raise over $25 million from individuals and family foundations, is why them? And the mistake is we keep our asks very generic, right? It's like, hey,
Okay.
would you consider giving 5 times more than you did before? This will allow you to have a bigger impact on teachers. It will allow you to reach more people. And it's going to allow us to continue our really important mission. That's a typical ask.
Hmm.
It's normal. And the reason that it doesn't often work is because it could be to anyone.
Mm.
You could
Okay.
make that ask to anybody, and you could copy and paste it in an email, and the person receiving it would be like, oh, this is just because I have money and they need money. And I don't give just because I have money,
Mm.
right?
See. Yeah.
And instead, what I teach people in my pitch framework is why them? So there's a specific way to tee it up, which we'll talk about in a minute, but the way that I would edit that invitation is I would say, "Hey, would you hey Heather, you've been giving for the last 5 years. So grateful. You're amazing. Okay. You've helped us reach 5,000 teachers. That's incredible. In 5 years. And I know that you give because of your faith. I know you give because you really have been impacted by education. You had a teacher who believed in you. You were a teacher. Education is a huge part of your own story. And you believe in us and in our ability to do this in a really cost effective way. We're certainly not the only education organization in Ghana that you can support. We're not the only ones doing this work. But what you've said, Heather, is that we're super cost effective. You've said that education really matters to you. And you've said that your faith is what drives you to give generously. And what I usually do is I'll say, is that fair to say?
Okay.
And you'll be like, yeah, that's exactly right. That's why I give. That's who I am. This is it, right? So you're reminding them of what they said.
Hmm.
This is what you told me. And you told me because I asked, but right? It also builds trust and credibility because it shows that I listen, right? And then I would say, for all those reasons, that's why I'm asking you to consider giving 5 times more.
Mm.
Now, there's nothing generic about that. Not at all. It could
Okay.
not be copy and pasted. It couldn't.
Yeah.
It's completely personalized to them, and it's about their identity. It's about their identity. And um it feels so much more personal. It actually is a way to encourage people, right?
Mm.
Um it's reminding them of the best of who they are. And what I believe is when we treat people like the best version of themselves, they usually rise up to that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to make it more personalized and to reinforce what they are already, standing on as their reasons for giving.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can, if it's no, I can't give, it's usually for reasons that you can't control, right? It's
Mm.
outside of your control if it's a no. But typically people feel so seen and
Hmm.
that they want to respond to that. Like, yeah, you do know me and that is who I am. And
Mm.
it's a psychological principle that, of identity confirmation. Like when someone says this is who I am, now they actually have to do something to double down on that.
Okay. Okay.
So, there was this survey that they did. I forget who did it. It was some university in the US. And they were surveying people and asking them, hey, if you want to do this, we're giving away this free bungee jumping experience because they wanted to like get press or get marketing for their bungee jumping tourist,
Okay.
attraction. And they tried to get people to do it for free to get people to sign on, and people, largely said like, nah, I'm good. But what they changed in this experiment was they went up to strangers in this tourist hotspot and asked them, "Are you an adventurous person?" And the people who said yes, they were like, "Hey, well, since you're an adventurous person, we have this free
Hmm.
bungee jumping experience. You want to come?"
Okay.
And the
Wow.
results
Mm-hmm.
completely changed as a result of
Okay.
that one single
Huh.
question.
Wow.
So when people tell you, I've had donors say to me, generosity is my core value, right? When people tell you, this is who I am,
Mm-hmm.
right? I remind them,
Okay.
you told me that this mattered to you.
Mm-hmm.
That changes everything. It changes everything.
Mm. Okay. I can see that.
Yeah. Is this helpful? What's striking you? What's sticking out to you?
Yeah, it is helpful, and it's making me realize that I that's a gap that I can fill because I've tended to just do a generic, you know, like here's what your money could support us with, but to be able to tie it to the individual, I can see that being much more effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about your, fundraising challenges. What questions do you have?
One question I have is so my the sense I have in terms of when making the ask and the amount to mention is that people kind of want to know what that amount will do, what it translates to.
Uh-huh.
So how to couple that with maybe it's two questions in one. So if you need to pick an amount to ask, how do you know what's reasonable to ask? Do you base it on past giving history, or you try and understand the person's capacity, or you just kind of pick a number for everybody and throw it out there? And then if that doesn't really match, and let's say maybe I said, okay, it's going to be 50K to achieve XYZ. They're like, okay, that's cool, but I can do 10. So then do I need to respond with, okay, great, so 10K will still help us do ABC? Is that important? Or we can just kind of leave it wherever they said that they're comfortable to land?
Mm-hmm. This is a great question. It's great.
Okay.
Heather, I heard you say the word reasonable. What's a reasonable amount? Did you notice that you
Mm-hmm.
said that?
Yeah.
Okay, Heather, you're not, you're, there's nothing about what you're doing that's reasonable. So you're going to have to leave that behind.
Okay.
You
Trying to reach all
told
the people
me,
in
right?
Africa.
You
Yeah.
told me we're going to impact all of Africa,
Mm-hmm.
tens of millions of people, teacher training that impacts young people across the entire continent that has 60% of the world's young people.
Mm-hmm.
Holy guacamole. Like, just really let that waft over you. It's unreasonable.
Mm, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not just stick to impacting 10,000 people? That's a lot of people. That's amazing.
Mm, yeah.
When you're thinking about how much to ask for, you're thinking about where you're going. You're not thinking
Okay.
about what's reasonable. You're not thinking about, um, well, let me try to get really smart and guess how much money they have and what's an amount that's not going to ruin the relationship, And it's like, we just
Yeah.
don't know.
Mm,
Wealth engines, people don't even know how to read those results anyway. And a lot of them are inaccurate because really savvy, ultra high net worth individuals, a lot of their wealth is private, right? There's things that you're not going to be able to find that a wealth engine can, it's not even always accurate. We can't even rely often
Okay.
on smart intel that might make us feel better about justifying
Mm,
a bigger gift, right? We say, oh, well, now I
okay.
have a sense of how much money they have. Now I feel more okay with asking for $100,000 gift. And I want to offer an alternative that's served me really well, that's served my clients really well. And that's consider what your big vision is and what it's going to actually take. What is it going to take to impact the millions of people? Right. And so let me give you a really practical example. So previously, I was fundraising for News Story, which is an affordable housing nonprofit, lots of innovation in Latin America, building homes so that people who have been experiencing poverty can be homeowners and landowners, particularly women. Very interesting, huge passion of mine. um, and their vision is to house 1 million people by 2030.
Okay.
It's measurable, it's time bound, it's unreasonable. Uh, house 1 million people? What?
Mm,
Housing so expensive. What an expensive
yeah.
intervention, right? But when I told donors that that was the vision, that was the goal,
Mhm.
it made sense why I was asking them for more money.
Okay.
So either you're talking about your big vision. So a lot of people want to, they think, oh crap, I need a multi year strategic plan in order to do that. I don't think you do. You draw a line in the sand, you sit down with your board, and you make bold choices and you map out what is going to make sense for us in terms of programmatic growth and by when. And when you have that number, and of course it's a projection, right? You're shooting for something that's ambitious.
Mhm.
It's likely to change as you go.
Okay. Mhm.
But having that number, so if you were to say over the course of the last 9 years, we've helped 9,000 educators, we want to double that in half the time. I just made that up. So we want to reach 20,000 teachers in three
Mhm.
years. If
Okay.
that were your vision, then it would make sense that you would need more money to reach more people,
Mhm.
right? Now, I'm when I'm talking with a donor, they're clear about where we're going and that it's big and bold and that it's
Okay.
going to require more. More impact is going to take more money.
Okay.
Um, Without that, let's say you're not going to be able to, you have some asks coming up and you don't really have your exact strategy, your vision for over the course of years to come planned out. Fine. Then,
Mhm.
right, this is what it costs to reach the number of people this year that we want to reach.
Okay.
So your annual revenue is around $230,000. Is that what you said previously?
Mhm.
So, if you wanted to reach more people, so if you last year you served 1,000 teachers, this year you want to serve 1,200, or you want to go into 3 new schools, or whatever that looks like,
Mhm.
this is how much it's going to cost. It's going to cost $350,000 to do that.
Okay.
right? So that's
Okay.
just annual planning, an annual budget.
Right.
This is how we're going to grow. It doesn't have to be more people, right? Growth could be more holistic. So we're we're serving the same number of people, but we're doing it better, right? That
Okay.
could be growth.
Hmm.
So it could be that you're bringing in a clinician who is going to do mental health support for teachers, and you're serving the same number of people, but you're doing it in a way that is even more holistic and supportive based on what you've learned up until this point. And that's going to cost more money. So again, you could say, we're serving the same number of people, but we're doing it this way, and this is how much that costs.
Okay. So
Because
if I get
when you,
you,
I'll go ahead, you go.
sorry. So it sounds like the approach is to start from the bigger picture. Where are we going overall? And then invite people to help us rise up to meet that, as opposed to being like, okay, I think you could do about 2,000. So would you be willing to give 2,000, which will enable us to get XYZ? So
Yeah,
just kind
because
of
the way that,
share the bigger picture.
that's right. Because the way that you're doing it up until this point, and a lot of people do, there I totally get why, and I've also done that. Okay. You know, it, and that's kind of how we talk about it, right? It's like, well, $200 a month makes sure that a student has school supplies. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we get into those conversations with major donors, what ends up happening is it's as if you're making individual budgets for each
Hmm.
donor. And now
Yeah.
everything's segmented, right? And everything is there's no integration. And what happens is you end up with a lot more restricted funding from people who would give you unrestricted funding. So if you tell somebody, hey, if you give 10K, it's going to go to this specific school, it's going to go to this specific program, it's going to do this specific thing. Now that donor may be locked in to only doing that
Hmm.
moving forward, because it's sort of like we've trained them to do it.
Hmm.
Whereas if I tell
So,
you the vision, I tell you
mhm.
the impact from the entire organization point of view, from Practical Education Network, this is what we're doing. This is how much it costs. This is
Hmm.
who you are. And so, for those reasons, I'm asking you to give more. That's essentially
Hmm.
my pitch framework, what I just said. Then it makes sense because now
Okay.
it's about where you're going as an organization and if they want to help create that overall impact. Because oftentimes, and we saw this in 2020, and we're going to see it again when there's more, the world's changing so fast that we need flexible money that we can change and adapt our programs. Your mission isn't going to change, but how you do it might change. So you
Hmm.
need unrestricted dollars that are going to help you to adapt when things
Hmm.
happen. And you can't have this restricted funding tying your hands behind your back when there's a crisis,
Hmm.
when there's a change, when there's something that happens that's outside of your control. You're not going to stop
Yeah.
serving teachers. You're not going to stop what you're doing,
Right.
but you've got to change how you're doing it.
Yeah. That's so true. Okay. So don't worry about telling people what the specific figures amount to. Focus on the big picture and invite them to give into that bigger vision.
Yes. And then in terms of how much to ask for, I
Hmm.
have an ask amount ebook that I can send you. I'll just give it to you, for free for doing this, just to say
Okay.
thank you. Um, it walks you through the three main factors that I consider when I'm coming up with an ask amount for someone.
Okay.
for a major donor. Anybody who's giving above 5K, 10K annually, cumulative. So, I mean, yeah, it's who they are, what our goals are, and the amount that I can actually say out loud.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, yeah, and if your goals are big, then it would make sense that you would go to people and ask them for more.
Hmm.
And if they can't do that, then I find that it's better to assume that they're super generous and rich than to assume
Hmm.
that they're greedy and they can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I remember last year I made an ask to somebody who like her husband was in between jobs. So I thought like there's no way, this person's gonna actually be able to do something, but the passion for what we do was there. And I was like, oh wow. I was really blown away by her readiness to step in. So yeah, I get that. We shouldn't
Yes,
assume what people can give.
totally. Yeah. Passion matters way more than net worth, even when it comes to
Hmm.
giving.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
so what would I do? So there's a scenario I had recently where there's somebody who's been giving to us for a few years, consistently the same amount. And I decided to ask this person to give more. It was about 4 times more what they had been giving.
Ooh.
And yeah, but they said, I can do the same amount that I've been giving the last few
Mm,
years. But this is somebody who genuinely seems interested in what we're doing. I mean, they go out of their way to like hear what we're up to, get in touch with me. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then a few months later, he told me, I think you should probably not ask more than about 50% more than what I've given in the past. So what would you say to something like that? Is that kind of a ubiquitous thing that people might be feeling, or is it more of a person by person case?
so, um, yeah, I commend you for asking for the bold amount. I think that's awesome. What was your reaction? Like, how did you feel when he was like, "Oh, I'm just going to give the same"?
Well, I thought, okay, maybe I shouldn't have asked that much because like the trend is this amount. So maybe I should have just stuck with that amount if that's what he was comfortable with. That's what it made me feel like.
Yeah. And did you feel like embarrassed? Did you feel like frustrated? Did you feel disappointed, sad, confused?
Uh, I think it just made me feel like, okay, I'm not really sure how to know what to ask. I don't think I felt bad, but like it was good to ask, I felt, because I feel like this person genuinely is interested, so I should ask. But it just made me feel a little confused about the approach to take moving
Uh-huh.
forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when he said you should only ask for 50% more than what I gave before, how did you feel then?
Well, how did I feel? Uh, well, I think at that point I felt a little bad. I was like, oh, okay. So then it looks like I overstepped when I made that ask earlier. So I think I felt bad at that point. And then it just made me wonder, like, is this a rule? 50%, stick with the 50% generally. Yeah.
Mhm. When donors give advice about fundraising, consider it them giving advice on how they want you to handle them
Okay.
individually. When they try to share broad strokes, this is what you should do, they're giving you instruction manual on how to relate to them.
Okay.
Do not apply people's random advice and preferences to every
Okay.
donor. And it's a big mistake and it makes
Okay.
people do weird stuff that costs them hundreds of thousands of dollars. Um,
Hmm.
People get all kinds of advice that's frankly really bad. Um, and
Okay.
he's basically saying, ask me for 50% more.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's he's giving you advice like that's the amount that you should ask me for.
Okay.
So if I were you, I would go back to him and be like, "Hey, you said to ask you for 50% more, so I'm doing that."
Hmm. Okay. Okay.
That might actually get a lot of trust and respect from this person.
Mm-hmm.
But I would not apply it to every donor. So
Okay.
your job is to grow the mission, right? And to grow the impact. That's your job. And
Mm-hmm.
and to build relationships, to build partnerships that are going to get that done. That's the gig.
Mm-hmm.
That is the job. And everything else is basically a distraction. I mean, there's HR, there's team management, there's training. That's all of that is part of the gig too. But the main thing, the number one, right, is you are a visionary and a relationship builder. That's it. That's what you do. And in order to get this uh, impact, make it a reality, you've got to ask people to step up.
Mm.
So it's not your job to budget people's philanthropy for them. It's your job to ask.
Okay.
So don't try to guard yourself against hearing no, because that's
Mm.
surefire way to keep your budget really small.
Yeah.
And the more risks you take, likely the more I can't do it right now you're going to hear. And that's not a
Okay.
mark of failure. That's actually a mark of going to the next level of success.
Okay. Okay.
So when you're eventually you're going to raise multi-millions, Heather. That's your future self. Heather Beem, she's raised 50 million. That's where you're headed. And the person who's raised 50 million has likely asked for 2 times that amount.
Hmm. Yeah.
At least, right? I mean, that would be a
Mm-hmm.
50% win rate. That would be really amazing. So the bigger risks that you take, which means the bigger money that you're asking for, the more often you will get a not right now.
Okay.
The more often it becomes a negotiation, the more often it becomes a, well, okay, if you can't do 50K, what is the best gift you could do, Bob? You've been giving for 5
Hmm.
years. I
Hmm.
my sense is that you're really passionate about this. Am I wrong? I mean, I'm not wrong. You know what I'm saying? So, but again, it's they're going to confirm the identity because then what he could say is, "You're not wrong, but right now this is the situation that I'm in." He'll
Hmm.
tell you,
Yeah.
right? It's a conversation with a human being. They might just say like, "Hey, I love that you're asking for more, and I love that you think I'm that rich that I could give you that much money, but I'm really not. Like, I don't have that." Or whatever they're going to say, and it's okay. Like, it's just another Tuesday. And they're going to be with you. People are more forgiving, right? And you asking for bigger amounts actually tells me that you really are serious about this unreasonable vision
Hmm.
for impact. If you keep going back and asking for the same number, it's telling
Mm-hmm.
me the subconscious communication that I'm getting, the unspoken word is Heather talks a bit about doing this, but she's not that serious.
Hmm.
Serious
Okay.
people are going to ask for serious money. Now, if you're telling me you're going to impact tens of millions of people one day, oh yeah, this ain't going to be the last time you ask for 50K and somebody says, maybe I'll give 25. Great. Then that's definitely more than 10.
Uh-huh.
Not so that you can actually hit a grand slam, a home run every time you go to bat, right? It's like we want to be loyal to the big vision and where we're going. That's our responsibility. And I'm just going to assume that I don't know how wealthy you are, but I do have a better sense of how generous you are. And that's why I'm asking.
Hmm.
People cannot get mad at you for that. Why
Okay.
would they? Right? I mean, we're so worried about insulting people because we're asking for too much money. What actually ends up happening is when we don't feel challenged, we don't feel needed. When we don't feel needed somewhere, we don't stay.
Hmm.
There's no reason. Like, oh,
Hmm.
well, I guess they don't really need me because they don't really ask for nothing, and I guess I'm not needed. I'm
Hmm.
going to go somewhere where I'm needed.
Okay.
Subconsciously, we don't consciously think like, oh, I don't need these people. But that's what we might be communicating when we don't challenge people and they don't feel challenged and they don't feel needed.
Hmm.
They get bored. They're like, this is kind of this other nonprofit over here. They seem to really need help. I'm going to go help them.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's a flip in the framework and mindsets to adopt. Yeah.
Okay. So, what's one thing that you're going to do, one action step that you know you need to take, Heather, as a result of this conversation?
Well, I think the first thing is to look critically at the existing donors and try to apply the 80/20 principle to figure out who I can focus on to help them give more. Um, and I know you asked for one, but the other thing that's coming to mind is, yeah, challenging myself to align what I'm talking about with in terms of the vision with what I'm doing in fundraising. That's standing out a lot for me from this conversation is there can't be that disconnect. Like I have to be able to bridge the vision with what I'm asking people for. And it looks like there's some holes in the bridge right now. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And their question about, hey, so like, what does this do? Is ultimately their attempt to try to understand what your vision is.
Mm.
So, okay, yeah, tell me what the 10K does. It is
Hmm.
actually a question about, I don't understand the impact. I don't understand
Okay.
how this works.
Okay.
And they think they're actually giving you like a simple question, right? Because they're like, well, you're asking me for 10K, so what does the 10K do?
Yeah.
Whereas it's like, oh my God, I mean, I couldn't, you're not giving because of what 10K does, actually. You're giving because we are impacting teachers, this many, it's working, and we're not done yet. We're going to impact 10 times more in the next 5 years. And you think
Hmm.
that I can get it done. That's why you're giving 10K.
Hmm.
Now it's like I'm preempting those questions. And if they really are like, no, 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 but I need to know where every dollar is going to go, Heather, tell me, I need a, and it's like, then this might not be the place for you. Because if
Okay.
we're looking for partners and donors who trust us to get it done and aren't going to micromanage their 10K.
Hmm.
And if that's really important to you, I can recommend other organizations where they might be able to do that for you, but we are not in a available to do that kind of reporting. We typically do reporting for folks who give six figures.
I see.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
standards because now I'm showing you I'm not a chump. I'm not a doormat. You don't run this. I run this. I'm the boss. My name's Heather Beem. I'm the founder and CEO, and this is what we're looking for. These are our standards. This is how we operate, right? We respect what we're about. And if you want to get on board, let's go. We're going to change the world. If that's not for you, that's okay.
Mhm. Okay.
And then the people, then you end up working with people who are like all about it. They're trust based philanthropy. They're like, yeah, you don't need to tell me. I know you're busy. You let me know when you can what's going on. I'm here to help you.
Hmm. Yeah.
Dream.
Yeah, that would be awesome to have army of those people behind us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you allow and, put up with and tolerate any kind of stressful, micromanaging, I don't put up with that. I don't put up with disrespect. I don't put up with donors harassing staff in any regard. People just like ticky tack, it's like, oh my God, no, thank you. Like, there is not money in the world that could make me say yes to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Thankfully we've avoided those. We haven't had any cases like that.
That's great.
But yeah, I think hearing you describe it, it's like it's an opportunity for people to join us and to make this all happen. And
Yes.
so
What are
I
they
should
going to
feel
go
more
do, Heather? They're
comfortable
going to
like,
go start an education network in Ghana. They're going to go do it themselves. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're going to sit in Ohio. They're going to have their nice house and their job and their family and their responsibilities. And they're going to cut you a check for 10K and they're going to live their life. And that's their contribution. And they get to do what you're doing without having to change their whole life and turn it upside down. Like, it's an
Mhm.
opportunity they can't get anywhere else. There's nobody else doing what you're doing the way that you're doing it with the vision that you have. There's not. So it's like, yeah, do you want to partner with us? Because we're going to freaking change all of the African continent. Do you want to go? Let's go.
Awesome. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me. What's your big one takeaway?
To not assume the amount that people will be willing to give and pitch the big vision and challenge them to rise up to join us to make it happen instead of
Yeah,
trying to decide for them what they should do.
love it. Beautiful. Amazing. Go,
Thanks so
Heather.
much, Julie.
Thank you.